I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 2, recorded on August 25th, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is responsibility. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available right below the main video window, right down there. If you just look down there on the live page, it's available for you. Best way to interact with the show, we'll take your live questions when we can. That's in there. Bottom left-hand corner, click Log In, choose the guest account, put your name where it says guest. Take the numbers out. Just put your name in there, hit submit, and you are in the chat room, and we'd love to have you in there. By the way, that works on mobile devices as well if you want to join us. If you're listening to the recorded version, need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, we do that as well. Contact us, coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your coaching resources and training needs. By the way, go visit Strengths Quest. So if you've been a Strengths Quest customer of ours, or you've used that recently, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to strengthsquest.com. We have a brand new look and feel to that kind of matches the rest of our Gallup sites, and so they have been working on that over the last couple months. Strengths Quest, all one word, strengthsquest.com. And that's really Strengths Quest is for our college, high school students taking, it's the same assessment, same StrengthsFinder assessment, but all the materials are available, more geared towards college students, careers, those kinds of things, strengthsquest.com. And then don't forget to visit the coaches blog, the record-setting coaches blog, by the way, Maika. That thing is rocking right now. Lots of great, we just released a really great article out there. You want to head out, coaching.gallup.com. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. She is my favorite learning development consultant, but don't tell anybody, here at Gallup. And Maika, thanks for coming on, and welcome to another Theme Thursday.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here.
Always good to have you. Lots of great stuff going on here at Gallup right now. So it's an exciting time to be around. Today we're talking about responsibility, and we just admitted a little bit in the pre-show, pretty low for both of us. So we may need some chat room involvement here today. But let's dig in a little bit. Let's talk about responsibility.
Absolutely. And on that term of what's high or what's low, I think it's easy to look at responsibility low and think that you're irresponsible because you don't lead with responsibility. And again, that's not it. Your Clifton Strengths Finder themes aren't going to tell you what you do and don't do. They're going to tell you how you do or don't do it. So both Jim and I lack the theme responsibility, but we get things done. We follow through. Today we get to study how people with responsibility get things done and follow through. And essentially responsibility is, my favorite definition is if somebody with high responsibility says they will do something, they may as well tattoo it onto their forehead because it is psychological ownership of your own commitments. If you take a look at our companion guide, and if you haven't downloaded that companion guide, pause right now and go download it. This is what we're going to follow through for the entire time together today. You can fill in our insights on the theme of responsibility. The very first thing that you'll take a look at on that guide is the short definition. It sounds like this. People exceptionally talented in the responsibility theme take psychological ownership of what they say they will do. They're committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty.
Yeah, I love that definition. Two of my children are their bookend. So, I have 5 kids. My oldest and my youngest both have high responsibility. And that's been really important in our parenting of them because we can pretty much trust them, right? We think of loyalty. We think of the other word, honesty. From that standpoint, learning that about my children was so important to my parenting. And so it's just one of those things. We see that. My wife has it too high. And so at our house, there is, if you say it, this is why it's so bad for me, because I'm not built that way. And so I'll say things, and then they'll be like, hey, didn't you say you were going to do that? I'm like, oh, yeah, well, that didn't really happen, and they don't get it. It's a foreign concept. That honesty and loyalty is super important. When we think about the themes power and edge, Maika, what do we think about?
So what makes it valuable? What makes it awesome? Here, with responsibility, the genius of those with strong responsibility talents stems from the deep sense of dedication and ownership they feel toward the things that they commit to. They are people of their word. and others know they can rely on and trust them. I think that notion, Jim, that you just mentioned of, people without responsibility might say, yes, I'll do something as part of a conversation. I don't think that I don't think it comes from bad intention to say yes at one moment and maybe not follow through on the exact same commitment. If you don't have high responsibility, sometimes a yes is furthering an idea. Sometimes a yes is consideration. For people with high responsibility, a yes is etched in stone. A yes is a contract in that moment that they don't let go of. And I think that is amazing. My husband has responsibility in his top 5, and knowing that makes my life easier because I know that it doesn't do me a whole lot of good to ask him something more than once, because even if he hasn't got to what I've asked him to do or what I've asked him for feedback on, I know that it's somehow in the queue in his brain, and he doesn't quit until that queue is to 0. So it certainly changes the relationship that I have with him. I love the word loyalty as well, because I think that makes it almost look like a relationship building theme. It is an executing theme the way that we classify it here, but it brings with that a sort of it is about the task, but with responsibility, it's the promise, and there are other people committed to that task and connected to that task. So I think it can look like, following through on your commitment to somebody is a demonstration of loyalty, and it can feel kind of emotional to people who are receiving your responsibility.
JB had asked us in chat to expand a little bit on that term stable. Up in the definition, we think about stable values. In my wife, Sarah, who has responsibility and belief very high, for her, that's really, when I think of stable values, that belief responsibility combination, she just doesn't change. I mean, one, if she says it, she's going to do it. 2, if she believes it, she's going to follow through. Like rock solid stability. I can count on a situation, like if something's going to happen and I can predict how she's going to respond to it based on her values, I know there's 99 times out of 100 this is how she's going to respond. That's when I think of stable, when in that case that's stable values, where for me I'm a little situational. Well, maybe okay, maybe not. No, I'm probably going to go this way. I shock people because I change. They try to predict my behavior and they can't. Maika, what do you think as we think of that committed to stable values?
I think it's that altogether. It's difficult to take one specific word out of that definition and want to expand upon it. I think when you look at the entire thing, that committed to stable values is really what responsibility is around, because there's I think a weight to commitment for people with high responsibility. I think people with high responsibility live in this area of promise keeping, and that commitment to stable values is part of it. It's what probably separates responsibility from achiever, because there's a little bit more of that emotional piece to why you're following through on what you're doing, whereas achiever, I think it's a little bit more about the list is the king. With responsibility, there is that emotional is the best word I can come up with. That connection to there's an integrity piece around this. There's other people counting on me. It's not just about the list, but it's about the other people who are involved. If I do, and if I do follow through, or if I fail, it's that immediate connection that, wow, I value the fact that I'm letting somebody down if I don't execute on what's on my list.
Yeah, I think we'll flesh that out a little bit more too as we go through these. Let's dive in. We've got some boxes that have the words raw and mature over them, and so let's dig in a little bit on what those mean.
Yeah, I don't have responsibility, but it is a pretty common theme. I think it's tied for second most common in our entire database, tied with learner. About 29% of people who've taken StrengthsFinder have responsibility in their top 5. So in the decade that I've been coaching, the almost decade that I've been coaching, I've seen a lot of responsibility. And I think it's one that is easier to talk about than others for people who have it, because it's an approachable word. That word responsibility, it's something that you can bring up and you can say, what does this mean for you? Tell me how it plays out. So I've gotten to learn as a secondhand observer about responsibility from a lot of people who have it. And I drew upon that learning and those stories to illustrate here, what does raw responsibility look like when it's perhaps in a state where it's underdeveloped? And what does the other side of that spectrum look like, mature responsibility? What is it when it's in its healthiest place, where it's really, truly thriving, benefiting yourself and others? The first sort of, I think, continuum here that I think about with responsibility. Raw responsibility executes out of guilt, and mature responsibility executes out of joy. I think that when you operate from a place of following through on your commitments, you get things done, which can lead to you being the go-to person to get everything done. It's rare that I speak with someone with high responsibility who doesn't have some sort of anxiety over the amount of things that they've committed to. There's that old adage you can say, if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person you know. I find that happens with people with high responsibility, as other people tend to pick up on the fact that they follow through on what they say, so they end up with almost too much to do. And I think that number of how much is too much is going to depend on every single person's other themes and their circumstance. But maybe a way to think about, do I have too much on my plate, is am I following through on my commitments because I'm afraid that I won't, or because I feel this sense of guilt? Is that what's motivating me to keep those promises? Or do I have enough breathing room that everything I execute upon comes from grace, comes as a gift, comes as sharing joy? And I think when responsibility gets overloaded, they miss out on the joy of delivering what they said they would deliver, because sometimes it takes a couple extra seconds to say, hey, check it out, I did what I said, and here is that that joy that I can share with you by following through on my promise. I think there might be a tipping point of quantity around that helps it go from raw to mature.
Yeah. What else? When we think of those two.
Sure. Raw responsibility says I have to own everything all by myself. I see this quite a bit with managers with high responsibility, because they will, their good name is tied to the deliverables of their team. And it can feel like, I have to be able to, at the end of the day, it's my word, and I'm going to take responsibility for absolutely everything that my people deliver. So if I sense that something's going south, I'm going to jump in and do it. And that ownership can feel heavy. It can feel burdensome almost when it hits that point. The mature side of that is empowerment and enablement. So thinking about, where is that commitment? Is the commitment to the very end result, or is that commitment perhaps to the people who are helping you deliver that result? So mature responsibility says, you know what, I need to develop others, and that's a gift I can give by delegating. So ownership versus empowerment. And the final piece around responsibility, raw responsibility can look like a distrust of others. And I can tell I have very low responsibility. It's 26 for me, so it's not there really. And I can tell when I sort of make people with high responsibility nervous. It's, I'm quick to say, yeah, sure, we can do it, when what I really mean is we can think more about it, but I'm going to tell you yes, so that you know that you're in my brain. I can tell when I've worked with partners with high responsibility and they shudder at how quick I am to say, yeah, sure, it's fine. And I know that it comes from a distrust that I'm going to follow through. Because I'm not always, I might change horses, mid-race, or I might find something better, and I'll come back to you with that. But that can really you can rub somebody with high responsibility the wrong way. You meet too many partners who legitimately don't follow through, and that can lead to some distrust. I think that comes from high responsibility's awareness of our progress toward our commitments. And so that awareness can lead to thinking, no one does it like I do, and so I have to do it all. But the mature side of that, on the other side of distrust, is commitment to others. So thinking about, yeah, no one does it like I do, so where should I specialize? What can I do the very best, maybe that other people won't do quite as well, and how do I maximize my ability to follow through on my commitments by specializing in a specific place? And then how do I promise to other people that I will do everything that I'm best at and help them figure out ways that they can do what they're best at?
Those last two that we talked about really fit well into the me versus we when we think about the raw versus mature. We've been talking about that all season, for me, how it makes sense. And I really like that check on yourself to say, is it mature? Is it raw? Is it mature? Am I focusing it back towards me, or have I turned that outward into the we? And how am I... am I jumping in to finish things when we're getting close and I know they need to be done, or am I really enabling or using that responsibility? I think my friends, Maika, you mentioned, we have similar, we're built similar, and so we have similar experiences with our friends. And my partners are really good at understanding that that's a role they can fill for me, and then they can kind of boss me around with it, which is good, because I am content to rest in that responsibility. And when they get bossy, I go, that's good. I actually kind of need someone to boss me around from time to time, to get me to say, hey, did you think about this? Did you think about that? You going to complete this? Are we going to get this done? The other area where we can partner pretty well, I think, with someone with responsibility, and we're going to talk about some complementary themes here in a second, but is in that sense of oftentimes with high responsibility, one gets stuck in a pattern. And so it's worked this way every time. I know this is going to work and it's consistent. I'm not going to change it because I know I can be successful every time. And then you have disruptors like us who come in and say, hey, there's a new way to do things. And that's a real struggle. And yet my partners have learned to kind of trigger that sixth sense in me and capitalize on it. And we don't go my way every time, but sometimes it works. And so that the people with responsibility in my life will say, okay, I'm willing to let that go for a second because I know this new way could be better or could be more effective or could be different. And so I could give you hundreds of cases where we've changed up, Jody and I change up the way we do recruiting all the time. She's really good about, she'll think about it, I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And you can kind of sense that tension in her. She'll be like, oh, I don't know, that's good. How are we going to get this done? And it's important for me to realize, for someone with responsibility, I need to have the plan to convince them that it can get done in the time frame or whatever, that we will complete what we've committed to, even in the new way. So there's that partnership. Let's talk about some partnerships in themes, complementary themes, in that section.
Yeah, sure. So, I think on that note, I think responsibility brings great stability to partnership because it is that vision of, what have we already communicated externally that we would do? And that awareness of what's already out there that we need to finish before we move on to something else. And that stability can be what gets you through change. So, when you've got somebody that will help you do things differently, think about improvements, something like maybe it's ideation, saying, hey, there's a different way we can do this. Maybe it's maximizer, saying we have 12 outstanding commitments, but you know what, one of them is going to be way more important than the rest of them. I think the role that responsibility plays in a partnership is having the voice just to do a gut check and say, hey, do we all remember that this is what we said we would do? Is that still important? And even just having that, I think tactically, you could say, give the person with high responsibility 30 seconds at the beginning of a meeting just to update us on what's still outstanding. That's a great way to partner, because then I think you sort of mitigate some of the nervousness that, they've forgotten that they said they would do this and it's going to land on me. So just giving that stability of, hey, you've got your eye on what we said we would do. How can we partner with you by making sure that we see that as well? Some specific complementary themes that I think would work really well with responsibility. We mentioned ideation and maximizer to help sort of shake things up. I also put positivity because I think there's a levity to positivity that can shake up some of the seriousness of responsibility. So thinking about how could somebody with positivity bring maybe some humor, maybe some drama, maybe some excitement to the commitments that we're playing through. I also thought about some themes that would help responsibility sort. So similar to what I said about maximizer, that maybe there's a better way, the theme of significance came up. I think what significance could bring to responsibility is how do we sort to our commitments that are going to have the biggest impact, make the most meaningful splash with our customers, with our family, with our clients. And a third complementary theme here I have is developer. So think about if you're a developer, you've got your eye on how can we grow other people. And that might help that delegation piece that responsibility sometimes struggles with. If you're worried about this empower piece because you know at your heart and soul that you're the only one tattooing the ownership to your forehead, think about partnering with a developer and just asking the question, hey, who could I delegate to where this would be a gift to them? Who's up for some specific development on the commitments that we have outstanding, and how could that act of sharing our responsibility be something that would benefit somebody else?
Yeah, I don't. Are you reading the chat room? Maika?
No, it wasn't.
Oh,
Did
okay.
we say the same thing?
No, they asked that question right before you went to that. Guest 661 said, "How do we help people with this theme high and maybe raw delegate more, trust and empower others around them
Hey.
a little bit more?" And so I think you answered that. Whether that's in a person and we see where their developer is, and then I think as a coach be able to ask those questions, right? This is where it's important that we ask questions and don't dictate to the person, right? And say, hey, how could you use your developer wherever that's
Mhm.
at in the spectrum of it? Or, hey, looking at the team around you, how could you find someone, how could you find a key complementary partner that you could partner with to understand how to do that or build systems to make you get that done, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, right?
And that's commonplace for what we talk about with overcoming any sort of a challenge or overcoming a weakness. It's admit that you've got some tendencies there, be open and honest, and then have a great conversation with what a complementary partnership would look like. And then, if that doesn't work, think about some systems, think about some structures that you can build around yourself so that you can do what you do best and let the structure take care of everything else.
Yeah. And then the coach would say, and so what are we going to do in the next X number of weeks?
Yeah.
What are some goals set around this? What kind of conversations could you have? How are we going to get this far in this amount of time? And then follow up on that. So that is an awesome, that's just in a capsule. There's a little coaching moment as we think about working with people. On the back of it depends how you printed it. Either on page 2 or on the back of the form are some words. As we've been going through this, I have been in the chat room. I asked the chat room, Maika, some words that might relate to or might be representational to the word responsibility, or how it really works for them. In other words, if you were to put if you had responsibility in your top 5 and you were to give it one word, we have some characteristics on the back of the form. This is where this is a good thing to do in a meetup or in a group session, right? You can print these, turn it over, and then say, hey, circle the ones that pertain to you. Circle the ones that you identify with. It's a great exercise to be able to start digging in and refining that theme. And so we have words like diligent, judgmental, good and bad, both on that word judgmental from that standpoint. Driven, dependable, committed. Some of these came up in the chat room as well. Responsive, independent, self-sacrificing, serious, loyal, conscientious. I mean, all those things as an exercise, a great exercise to say, flip that over and then start circling those. How does that work for you? And as a coach or working with someone in a coaching relationship, a great way to get some insight into, okay, let's define this a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our role as a coach is to help people take a look not just at every single theme, but maybe at the combination of their top 5, and be able to put this sort of framework into your own words. So we're talking about words that describe me, the value I bring, the role I can play, the needs I have, and my motivations. And we can give you these individually for each one of our 34, and we do. It's up to you to think about, how does that really play out for me? So when you think about the recipe of your own top 5, how much of one do you have versus another? And sometimes I like to challenge people to say, okay, out of your 5, which one right now would you say is sort of the ruler of the other 4? And choose a word on the role that you play. So choose a noun that you feel really describes that theme for you. So maybe on responsibility, you would choose owner, the first word here on the role that I play. And then look at the other 4 within your top 5 and choose some characteristics that go along with that. So if you have positivity and responsibility, maybe you're a jovial owner. If you've got discipline and responsibility, maybe you're an organized owner. But being able to sort of mix these together and help us come up with the beautiful messiness that is human beings. I mean, that's probably the beauty of what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we're gonna run out of time. Likely, Maika, it's some great stuff to cover. Likely and unlikely pairs. When we think about
so this is statistically, and I think it's really important in your journey to fall in love with all 34 themes that you think both statistically and theoretically. So all that we have on likely and unlikely is in a random sample of 250,000 people who completed StrengthsFinder, what showed up the most statistically in their top 5 with responsibility, and what showed up the least. So here's the statistic piece of it. Or keep in mind you should also think about what are the comparisons and maybe some of the compare and contrast any theme just to get all those themes, that awareness of them in your mind. Statistically, most likely to show up with responsibility is achiever. I talked about this a little bit before. Achiever is very task aware, very progress minded, as is responsibility. So it makes sense theoretically as well that they would happen together. If you've got that sort of mind of where are we in our progress, that could come from responsibility because that progress is toward a promise to another person, or it could also come from achiever because that progress is toward the list itself. So I think it's maybe the contrast between achiever and responsibility is commitment versus a promise to yourself. And sometimes I think about, achiever likes to check off what they've done, and I almost think that responsibility goes a little bit backwards. They're constantly thinking about what is there that's yet to do. When you see them both together, I think it's incredibly powerful because it adds an element of trackability to that responsibility piece. It adds a clarity of what is the promise, but also what needs to be done. The other thing achiever brings to responsibility, if you had them both in one person, is that ability to say, we've made a gigantic commitment, responsibility, and here's the 10 steps that we need to take in order to chip away at our responsibility toward that commitment. So it's achiever brings that ability to say it's not just one big thing, there are steps to achieving that big thing. Least likely, statistically, it's command, but to be honest, command is the least likely theme to show up with just about half of our 34 because we're looking at statistics. So command is the least common theme in our entire database, so that could be the reason it's unlikely to show up with responsibility. It could just be a numbers game there. But let's compare and contrast the two. Really, command and responsibility, I think, can have a voice in a bigger place pretty easily. For command, that voice comes from responding to the needs of the moment, responding to what needs to be said, what does the group need, what kind of direction is needed right now. Whereas from responsibility, I think that voice comes from a pre-existing list. So the needs of the commitment, the outstanding needs versus the needs in the moment. Command is an influencing theme, responsibility is an executing theme, so maybe that illustrates that a little bit more. You certainly could have them both together, and I imagine that being a really great referee for a group, to be able to say, hey guys, there's stuff that we need to do, and it can be a gift to other people. Here's the way, let's all go together and do it.
Mike, as we set up for our theme pairs, just a reminder that we make these available in our Facebook group. So if you go to facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach, each week we put out a survey for you guys. We take, like this week, we took responsibility and put out 5 sample themes to say, what do you want us to pair up? And we use Kurt Liesfeld's book, Expanding Your Strengths, and there's a web app that goes with it. By the way, available internationally now. And so if you head out to coaching.gallup.com and look on the resources tab, at the very bottom is the link to that book if you want to purchase it. So we'll roll through those, Maika, but some final thoughts just as we kind of transition into the pairings.
Sure. When you're coaching somebody with responsibility, I think one of your missions can be help them take ownership for what matters most, rather than just taking ownership because they're good at owning. So how do you help them? Maybe it's looking at their other themes and help them think about, what is the most important thing to you? Perhaps it's something that's tied to your values. Perhaps it's something that's tied to a unique gift that you bring, or a unique community that you want to serve. But really thinking about what can you specialize in, because what you say you will do is incredibly powerful. So let's make sure that you are you're following the essence of who you are. It's easy for people with high responsibility to get too full of commitments, but rather than making this an exercise in telling them to say no, I think it's helping them practice the value of their yes. So looking at not just you need to say no more often, help them think about what do you choose to say yes to. What are the tasks you should uniquely be doing? If you want to do something and you have high responsibility, think about making that an external promise, because that's what you'll follow through on. I coach a lot of people with high responsibility who say, you know what, I got way too sucked into one project and I wasn't able to give the time I wanted to another. And they think that if they say, well, if I'm just my own best friend and I work out more or I eat better, then I'll do it. And I say, you're probably more likely, if we lean into that responsibility, you're probably more likely to eat better, work out more or spend more time on a different project if you tell somebody else and if you make it a promise, because that's something that you're already doing really well. So I think there's that element of external commitment that's really going to drive, kick somebody's responsibility into that drive place.
Yeah, those are some great insights. Let's jump into as we think about these theme dynamics. This is
my favorite part.
When we put two together, I'll put those up on the big screen for folks so they can see it. Again, available as the web app inside of Expanding Your Strengths, our ebook. We do not have a printed copy of this book. These are ebook only, available on Kindle, in all kinds of different ways to consume it. So don't, if you have any issues with it, just reach out to me via one of our social channels, and I can help you get that done. But this is the web app associated with it. Maika, we have, or the group chose Harmony as their number one. Actually, it was a tie between Harmony and Activator, so we'll cover both. But when we put responsibility and harmony together, what do we see?
So Harmony is a relationship building theme. It's about driving for consensus because that's a way that you get toward efficient forward progress. Both of them have that element of progress awareness to them, but I think that Harmony is a lot more responsive to the emotion of the people around them. When you put them together, it sounds like this. Others can count on you to build emotional environments that encourage cooperation and facilitate practical productivity.
When we, number two, I said it tied, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. No, we didn't. Actually, we think about responsibility and activator.
So actually, if you watch season 1 of Responsibility, there's a bit of a conversation about Activator and how it can really sort of liven up responsibility. And I love the two of them together in one person. This idea about theme dynamics is how one theme interacts with another one. And Activator interacts with responsibility by, I think, speeding it up and perhaps bringing a little bit more confidence that we can start things. So it sounds like this. You often make a commitment before anyone asks for it, and you strive to honor your commitments as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting when we think about those two together. Before anyone asks for it, having kind of that predictive indicator of it, and then having them done as quickly as possible. And I think sometimes even before people expect it, right? That's kind of from that sense about putting those two together. So
I also think, the activator is an influencing theme, which sometimes we understand it more as executing because it's starting things, but it really is, it's not just I want to get started, it's let's get going. So I think responsibility, when you bring it together with activator, might help the group take more ownership for things as well.
Yeah, I was going to say in the we-me environment, with using activators and influencing theme to get groups going, and then get groups going, and when we think about responsibility, actually getting groups to commit to things they've said they would do. So how many committees have you been on, Maika, where it's a great idea, everybody agrees we should do this, but then like at the end of the day, hey, who's actually going to do this thing? And we need those high responsibility people to come along with the group and say, no, guys, we actually need to activate on what we said and get this thing going. I mean, that's a perfect example of where I think we fall down civically a lot of times in civic groups because we don't follow up on those.
Sure.
Let's look at responsibility number 3, responsibility and learner.
Yeah, so looking at these two together is fun. They both happen quite often, so you're pretty likely statistically to see these two within a human being. Learner's a strategic thinking theme that's all about enjoying the process of mastery and the process toward mastery. When you put it together with responsibility, it sounds like this. You're at your best as a student when you commit to teaching others new information or concepts. So in that definition, I think what it helps us understand is that responsibility would expand the learner self-discovery toward that commitment to others. And again, that comes back to that stable values, the honesty, integrity, maybe the worthwhileness of what's on your to-do list. I think that responsibility carries a weight of not just wanting to do busy work, but do something that's really going to benefit others. I think learner sort of expands that and says, there's a lot of discoveries to be made in the world. How can that benefit somebody else?
For sure. Number 4, responsibility and input. Hold on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Another strategic thinking theme, input is similar to learner. It is, rather than the process of learning, input is all the stuff that teaches you. So high input is an insatiable thirst for information that you may or may not need to do anything with, but it's that ability to sort through and gather information and sometimes be able to file that away and offer it as a resource to other people. When you put that with responsibility, I think it adds some credibility to responsibility. It might add stories or journal articles or experience to responsibility to really back up your reasoning for following through on your commitment. Or in Kurt Liesfeld's words, your service to others involves identifying real needs and a commitment to finding and sharing exactly what they need.
Yeah, it's a powerful statement. We mentioned earlier in the show that next week we're off. If you're listening to this in a time-shifted manner, you don't really care. But for those who are live, we'll be off next week. We're coming back the week after it on a Wednesday with restorative. And as we think about responsibility and restorative, Maika, first maybe a little bit restorative, and let's look at the pair.
Sure. Restorative's about an attraction to and a knack for fixing things that are broken. Restorative's about not being, I think, overwhelmed by something that needs to be fixed, but being able to say, hey, I can see how I can bring this mess back to order. When you blend it together with responsibility, you've got two executing themes, and it sounds like this. You're willing to sacrifice and serve so that something or someone broken can be made whole.
Yeah, I love that. Something we often think of this in terms of fixing things, but I love that Kurt brought in, and I love that word serve, by the way, sacrifice and serve, but I love the fact someone or something, right, broken. And I think as coaches or as people or as managers or as parents, that can be an incredibly effective. I would lean heavily on this for folks in some of that space because of that. And so just a really powerful combo as we put those two together. And they can all be powerful, right? But
absolutely.
Love the wording on this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about restorative because I think it's an executing theme that, again, brings so much emotion and so much almost service with it. Overall, responsibility is, I think about, to come back to responsibility is a servant theme. I would be interested to take a look at how people with high responsibility would describe how they love, how they show compassion to others. I would imagine it has an element of acts, doing acts for others. And there is that external commitment that you follow through on that's just incredibly beautiful, and it's demonstrated loyalty out loud. Now it's in a very tactical way because it's specific to promises, but that idea of putting it together with restorative, I imagine somebody who is unafraid of messy situations and who can sort of turn that mess into something that you can do something about. And I can't imagine a world that wouldn't need more people like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Remember, 2 weeks, and it's on a Wednesday, so 13 days coming up. Again, if you're time shifting this, you might just say, well, whatever, I'm just going to go listen to the next one. But if for those of you who are listening live, and we love our live audience, thanks for coming out. It's always great to have you guys out there. Maika, any final thoughts as we kind of wrap up responsibility here?
It's really beautiful. I think it sometimes feels like a burden to people who have it, but if you've got high responsibility, I'd encourage you just to see that this is a powerful, a gracious, a compassionate theme, and give yourself some space to make sure that it's thriving and that it's leading you to thriving rather than feeling like a heavy load. I have one final quote to end us with today. It's from Carl Jung, or is sometimes quoted as C.G. Jung. You are what you do, not what you'll say you'll do.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, and you show it, you live it, right? You don't say it. I'm a sayer. I will say lots of yeses to people. Those with high responsibility will actually do, and they're needed. They're needed in our world, and they're needed in what they do. And if you have high responsibility, step forward and be counted. Again, don't forget, there's plenty of resources available on the back side or on page 2 of these and of the companion guide that's available for you. And let me encourage you, once you've got this downloaded, share it out there. Love to have you print that, use it for user groups, use it for people, your friends, those kinds of things. All 34 are nearly done, and so as we think about going through, again, you can find those at the coaches blog. Go to coaching.gallup.com. Look on the GWSW tab and everything. This is a really common question I get. If there's a hyperlink there, it means we have a guide ready and available to go. We're down to actually only having 3. We've got 5 sessions left, Maika, 5. Till we get to the end of the year.
Can
Excited.
you believe that? It's been amazing. And I think the way that people use this has been what I've enjoyed the most. Consider starting off with a 45 minutes with us and then leading into just a great small group discussion of what these themes mean for you. I love just asking people. I've started to ask on our Instagram page every week, what do you think the world needs to know about this theme? And it's really cool to have that conversation continue to go and continue to be positive. Really, our goal is that everybody educates themselves about some themes that maybe they may not have come across and can see ways that they'll fall in love with them.
We also spent some time a week or so ago alphabetizing and cleaning up the Theme Thursday shorts, which I think a lot of people use, Mike, as I was looking at those. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you just go to youtube.com/Gallup Strength Center. I think it's there. Just Google Gallup Strength Center inside of YouTube. Search for that. That's our main page. We have a tab there, or a channel called Theme Thursday Shorts. They're 8 to 12 minutes. Maika here and a couple of them doing them. Those were Kurt's original. That was his idea originally. Actually, we pulled that out a little behind inside baseball stuff. We never intended to do the shorts. Kurt's just started doing these overtures. And Paul Allen said, we got to pull those things out and make them their own videos. And so we went through and dug those pieces out. So 8 to 12 minutes from Kurt, and then after Kurt passed away, we had his peers finish those for him. Those are all available if you need a quick version of it. We'd love to have you show these or that or whatever it works, but that wasn't a very clean list, and so I spent the other weekend kind of cleaning that up. And Maika, we also added corrected English captions to it. And so
awesome.
We had an open source team that helped me put that together over the course of some months. Too many names to mention right here. But we had a bunch of people jump in and correct those captions, on YouTube. The automatic ones cannot be very good. And so we had a team go in and fix those. And so if you want to go in and take a peek at those, they're at the English only. We have some hopes and dreams of maybe getting those translated into other languages, and it's a lot of work to get those done. And so we'll see if we can, as the years progress, if we can get those translated, at least the captions, into other languages. But those 2 improvements for you on those Theme Thursday shorts, both now in alphabetical order, so you can be able to get those by theme. It's a little predictable when you go through, and the captions are done. So lots of things going on here, Maika, as well. Well, I remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Send us your questions, comments, or if you'd like to be a guest blogger. Man, we've got some good blogs, Maika, coming out.
Oh my gosh, Jim, and just a sneak preview, from now until the end of the year, we are just stacked with really, really great content. Our blog is for everybody, not just for coaches, anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about the practice of coaching and helping other people be at their best, or learn a little bit more about CliftonStrengths. And there's some really wonderful content coming to amplify the already great content that's out there.
Yeah, and I've had some coaches say to me, Jim, I don't want to miss anything, right? Where is this? I don't want to miss anything. We've actually provided a way for you if you give us your email address. So if you go to coaching.gallup.com and look in the right-hand toolbar, it'll say get the blog by email, little tiny letters, so you have to look for it. Get the blog by email. If you give us your email address, we won't spam you, but every time we put out a new blog, you'll get notified. I have 1,400 people, Maika, who have signed up for this email notification. In other words, they don't never have to check the blog until we send you a proactive email that says a new blog is out. So if you don't want to miss anything,
sign up. My includer wants you all to know and feel important, so go sign up.
Yeah, hopefully you are getting those blogs automatically. And it's just a link to it so you can come back and view it. If you're interested in writing for us, write up 300 to 500 words is kind of what we're looking for. Send that in to us in an email. Send it to coaching@gallup.com and put guest blogger in the subject line. We'd love to have you be a part of what we do. We're not able to take everybody's, but we are able to take some, and we'll get that posted on the blog. We're setting some records on the number of people who are viewing that blog, by the way, so some great exposure for you as well. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified coach, we have a complete list of all our courses that lead to that certification if you just head to courses.gallup.com. I'd also encourage you to head out to the store. We've redone the store over the last couple weeks, and actually one of my interns has been working on it. So if you go to shop.gallup.com, and the navigation's a little bit easier now than it's been in the past to find things. So again, that address, shop.gallup.com. If you found this useful and helpful, we'd ask that you'd share it. And please, we open source all this stuff. Share it. Put the link. Put it on Facebook and put it on LinkedIn and tweet it and all those things. We'd love to have you do that, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 13 days as we do our next Theme Thursday. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.